Hi, my name is Cameron Knight. I'm here with you again today for another Tuts Plus tutorial. Today we're going to take a quick look at a classic camera, the Holga. These are widely available, widely sought after. People really love these cameras if they like to shoot them. They're film cameras, and today we're going to take a specific look at 5 ways you can better use it. These are going to be a combination of modifications you can make to it and some just tips to get you better acquainted with the camera and to get better pictures out of it. I am not a huge fan of the completely ruined photo look. I like my photos to be a little bit legible, I guess is the right word I'd like to use. So in order to do that, you need to make a couple mods to the camera and use it in some specific ways to get really good pictures out of it. They'll still have that Holga look, but they won't be just completely trashed and completely unpredictable. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is reducing a little bit of the light leaky, flary kind of issues that the Holgas can have. So let's jump into the back of the camera and take a look at what I did to help that out. So before we jump into the back and check out the way that I tried to cut down on some of the light flare, I just want to run through, this obviously isn't a stock Holga. I bought it as a stock Holga, but I did a couple other things to it. The main thing you'll notice is that it's red. They do sell red Holgas now, but this one was painted by hand. I don't want to misrepresent it. You'll also see here that this is the S version. They've made several different versions. You can go online and check out the different types of Holgas that are out there, just slightly different lenses or setups or whatever. They also make crazy, ones with 2 lenses or a pinhole instead of a lens and some other things like that. But this is just an S. This is one of the very early ones. You see up here at the top, I've taped over that switch that does the aperture because it doesn't do the aperture. So I just taped it down. So those are the 2 big ones in the back here, or on the front here, that I did to kind of just make the Holga mine, just to make it kind of personal. So jump around here to the back. You see there's some clips here. You push these down. Push both of these down and the back will pop right off. Sometimes when you don't want it to. And if you look in here, you can see that at one, you can see in some places there is some shiny plastic, especially there in the middle. I actually didn't hit that with the paint. But if you look at the sides here and the film chambers here, what I did was I masked off this middle part here with masking tape, and I used flat black spray paint to cover the whole area and make it less shiny. And what that does is it allows the light to just die when it hits the sides, which is a good thing. You don't want the light bouncing around and causing ghosting or any other kind of problems. So that's the very first mod I did. I just hit it with some flat black paint. Be careful with the masking tape. You don't want to get these ridges here with the paint because that'll mess up how the back attaches. And you don't want to spray, obviously, into the center here where the shutter assembly is and all of that. You want to be pretty careful to not get that. You can actually remove that if you're really worried about it. Obviously, you can come in here and do more if you wanted to. Maybe I'll do that eventually one day. But I haven't really noticed too many problems with bad flare or anything like that. So that's the flat black paint mod that I recommend everyone do. You may also notice here that I have the mask removed. There's a plastic piece that fits right over here that reduces the frame to a 6 by 4.5, 6 centimeters by 4.5 centimeters to give you kind of a vertical. And it allows you more frames on the roll, which we'll talk about later with this back here, how you can adjust this to tell you, that's how you advance your film. That's why there's a sliding thing here. There's 2 windows basically to allow you to advance your film correctly. But what we're worried about is that mask. So when you take that mask off, that's when you have the full 6 by 6, 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters square. And the only thing you have to worry about there is keeping your film tight. So some people wedge paper or something under your reels to make sure they roll a little tighter. But we're not going to go into too much about that. I just want to give you kind of a brief overview of the camera itself anyway. So the next thing I want to talk about is using flash with your Holga. As you know, the Holga has 1 shutter speed. That's 1 shutter speed, no adjustments. And no aperture adjustments. Despite the fact that it has a switch up here that changes aperture, most Holgas that doesn't do anything for. It actually just moves a bigger window in front of a smaller window, and it doesn't really do anything. So you've got your f8 on your lens, and you've got roughly 125th of a second. You can just round it to that. That's what I normally use. So with these known functions, we can really use flash well. You can adjust your flash power to just match your settings. It's really pretty simple. And depending on what ISO film you use, it can be really easy. But you've only got this hot shoe. So the thing that I like to use is a hot shoe to PC adapter. So here's the closer look at that hot shoe. You can attach any kind of hot shoe flash to this, and it typically works. Some more modern flashes like dedicated Nikon and Canon flashes sometimes don't work as well, but you do have a hot shoe. What you don't have is sync, any kind of way to get that flash off your camera. The easiest way to do that is with a cord, and you need one of these. This is the Nikon AS15. It is a hot shoe. This is the hot shoe adapter on the bottom here to PC. A bunch of companies make these. You don't have to have a Nikon one. You can get all kinds of different ones, generic ones, all kinds of them. So what you do is you just slide it onto the top here. It does have like a screw kind of thing that you can, like a collar that you can screw down to tighten it up. And then on the front here you have your sync cord. And what that allows you to do is attach a flash off camera very easily. I use Vivitar flashes, manual flashes, for most of my creative kind of flash work. And this allows me to hook right into that system and to use it as if it was any other thing. And the great thing about using the flashes is that it gives you one more kind of way to control your exposure. We're going to talk about using your film to control your exposure later on, but when you're just using your camera, if you have a roll in there, you're stuck with that ISO, then flash gives you a good way to just kind of, monkey with it a little bit and get the exposure right on. Because like I said, you know it's f8, so that's the most important thing when you're dealing with flashes, to know your aperture. So the next thing I want to talk about is your focusing. You have this zone focusing scale at the top of your lens here, and what that does is allows you to give rough estimates of like how far away you should be focused. So what I like to do when I get a new Holga is to go ahead and see what these actually mean. And the way that you do that is you open the back again, and you get a little Scotch tape, and then we'll check the focusing. So now we have our Holga. As you know, as I just mentioned, there are the focusing marks right there. You've got your person, you've got your 3 people, your family, your group, and your mountain. This should be infinity, obviously, and then this is a kind of closer range of focusing, maybe 5 feet, 6 feet. The thing is that you don't really know, right? So the best thing that I can do to kind of verify these settings is to check them through the back of the camera. So that's what we're going to do now. So once the back is off the camera, you can take some strips of Scotch tape here, run them across the gap. You don't even have to do very many. You can just do one if you want. Sometimes I like to kind of touch the tape and get my fingerprints on there to kind of fog it up even more. So you just attach to the back there. And then what you can do, and I can't really show you how to do this on film because you have to do it in the dark, is you just set your focus to something close and just stare really closely at this tape and fire off the shutter. And you should be able to see the image of whatever you're focusing on on the tape there. And then you can verify how far away you need to be for the closest setting, for the the group setting, for all of that. You can do that all just by testing and looking on the back to see the image. The best way to do this is to be in like a darkened room and be focusing on something outside of that room that's very bright, and that'll make it really easy to see that image pop up. And then you just can do it several times and make sure you're in focus, and then maybe you measure that distance, maybe you just kind of gauge it by your eye to kind of get an idea of how far away you need to be for each of the different distances. The other thing that you can do is once you do this several times, if you get your measurements pretty exact, is you can come over on the top here onto your lens, and you can actually mark like a feet distance, like on the lens here, maybe with some tape or even some white paint. You could put like 5 feet or 8 feet or 10 feet or whatever. Typically, just to give you kind of a rough idea of what these distances are, the person is usually between 4 and 6 feet away. The 3 people is probably 10 to 12 feet away. The big group is even further away, usually 15 feet to 20 feet. And then obviously infinity is infinity. It's, very, very far distances. So that is how you can work on getting your focusing a little bit more precise on your Holga. So as I mentioned earlier with our lighting situation with using a flash, there's only a few ways that you can really take control of your Holga in terms of exposure. So again, you've got no shutter speed control. You've got one shutter speed. You've got one aperture. So what's left? You have your film speeds, right? So now I want to really jump into how to control your exposure and how to get good exposures by using different film ISOs. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about exposure. We all know the Sunny 16 rule. The Sunny 16 rule states that if you set your camera to f16, then your shutter speed, which is 1 over a number, this number should be the same as roughly the same as your ISO. So if you're shooting 100 speed film, you should use an aperture of 1 over 1/25, so 1/25 of a second. So this is a basic idea of how to work exposure when you don't have a light meter, which the Holga does not have. So do we see any similar settings here that our Holga might have? Yeah, this 1/125 of a second is the shutter speed that the Holga uses. So by translating this, we see a problem. The advertised aperture on a Holga is f8. It says it right on the lens, right? So at f8 at 1/25 of a second, our ISO, by translating this, becomes 25 ISO. You can barely find film that's 50 ISO, let alone 25. So we need to figure out what's going on, right? Well, the first thing is that this advertised aperture of the lens is not even close to being correct. The aperture of a Holga lens is between f11 and f16. It's actually about f13 is the aperture of a Holga lens. So that takes a little bit of the worry out, right? So in sunny conditions, using our Sunny 16 rule, we can use an ISO of 50 to 100. 100 speed film is extremely easy to find, and 50 speed film isn't that hard to find. 25 is where you really get into trouble. So now we have a setting for our sunny conditions. If you're going to be outside in the sun, get 100 speed film, maybe 50, and you'll be good to go. So now let's step down and see what other ISOs we can use to get good pictures. So in shade, which is usually considered one stop below sunny, you'll want to use 200 ISO film. Situations where you might predict that you would be in shade is if maybe you're going on a hike through the woods, and there's going to be a lot of shade in situations like that. So put in some 200 ISO film. On overcast days or cloudy days, you'll want to probably go another stop to 400 ISO. And then finally, if you want to go inside in dark conditions, you probably need to jump all the way to 1600 to 3200 ISO. Actually, Ilford makes a 3200 speed film that is very, very good. So here are some basic starting points for controlling aperture, or for controlling exposure. If you're going to be outside, shoot 100 speed film. In the shade, in like a wooded area, maybe 200 speed film. On an overcast day, put in some 400 speed film. And if you're going to go inside, use 1600 or 3200 speed film, or you can just use a flash. And with a flash, I like to use 200 speed film, just because it's kind of in the middle, 200 to 400, let's say. So I hope this gives you a little bit of an idea of how to use exposure. It might have been a little bit hard to follow my crazy, war plan here, but I think this will give you a good idea of how to really actually control exposure on your Holga. You basically do it using film speed, and here's a rough guide of what you should use to accommodate pretty much any situation. So you'll hear a lot of times about people taping up their Holgas to let in less light leaks. That's a great idea. You can always take electrical tape. I use electrical tape, but gaffer's tape would work really well. Any kind of just opaque tape. Bookbinder's tape works well too. Any kind of opaque tape to kind of block off any light leaks you have. A lot of times I will do that if I'm carrying the camera around outside. A, to help with the light leaks, and B, to hold the back of my camera on, because these little clips are fiddly and they can come loose and you can just lose your film out of the back. So that tape serves two purposes. But there's another place where you can get light leaks in a Holga, and that's right here in this window. So let's take a closer look at this window and what you can do to seal it up a little bit better. There's a couple things you need to know before we get started on the window. First, how 120 film works. Holgas use film that's called 120 film. It has a paper backing. You can see this is a roll of 120 film. Now you can see here that there's some printing on the back of this. You can see that it all faces one direction, as if the film was being advanced this way. Holgas have the advanced crank on this side over here. So your film will actually be upside down. This is actually pretty common. It's not too much of a thing to worry about. So as we advance our film, eventually you'll start seeing some numbers here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can see the numbers on the very bottom, 1, 2, 3, those are the closest together. That corresponds to your vertical, when you're using your mask, that vertical 6 by 4.5 frame. So if you're using that mask, you want your numbers, the numbers on the bottom, to be revealed. And you do that by sliding this window up to be pointing at 16. That's the number of frames you're going to get on your roll of film, 16 frames. So the little arrow on your sliding thing is pointing at 16. You're going to get 16 frames, and you're going to be revealing the bottom numbers here. That's a good thing. That's what you want to do. The numbers in the middle are for 6 by 6. If you're not using your mask, you're just using the raw kind of area there, then you're going to get 6 by 6, which is these middle numbers. The numbers at the very top are for even bigger frames. We don't have to worry about those at all. So 1, 2, 3. So in order to reveal those numbers, what you do is you slide the window, or slide the little tab down the window. And it's pointing at 12, meaning you're going to get 12 frames. That's how many frames you will get on a roll of film, a roll of 120 film shooting 6 by 6 centimeter frames. So the problem is, on most nice 120 cameras, this red window can be covered somehow. So what I do is you need to figure out a way to cover it temporarily in between frames, because as you're carrying the camera around, if light hits that red window enough, it will screw your film up. But you need to be able to look through it still, because you need to be able to advance your frame and watch the numbers go by. Okay? So it's a conundrum. We need to be able to temporarily cover up this window. So this is what I like to do. Most Holga shooters, and I encourage you to kind of maybe do this too, will either only shoot 6 by 4.5, or will only shoot 6x6. I typically always shoot 6x6. So I know that I never need to look through this bottom window. So what I do is I cover that up. I've uncovered it now just to kind of show you how I do it. But you can see I have my thing there. I'm going to cover it with a little bit of transparent tape just so you can get an idea. I would normally cover this up with black electrical tape, gaffer's tape, some kind of opaque tape. So just cover up half the window. And now what you have is you have a sliding door. So this will always be covered. You can actually see the tape through there. So now, when I want to advance my film, I slide my window down. I advance my film so I can see the numbers. I go to 2 or whatever the next frame is. When I'm done advancing, I slide my window back up, and then nothing is getting through this window. I have the black tape over the bottom, and I have my little slider over the top. And that allows me to always have it covered when I want it covered. So I go to advance my film, I slide it down. I advance my film, I slide it up. And then both parts of the window are covered because I have my black tape over on this side. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Holga. It really is a fun camera. It really strips away all of the creative distractions that you might have with a DSLR or some other type of camera with a lot of adjustments. You're basically just worried about trying to get it kind of in focus, and then composition, which is really important. So once you really dive into the Holga, it can be a lot of fun. You can get really good results out of it, and the medium format film it uses just produces wonderful resolutions. So I hope you've enjoyed this look. We'll see you back here next time.